How did Tux, the penguin, go from being the logo of open source software in the early 90s to becoming the mascot of an operating system that now dominates the space program and serves as the primary infrastructure for the top 500 supercomputers in the world? Well, if you were to ask the average person on the street, you would likely be confused as they mistake Tux for Pengu. And if you were to ask a budding computer science student, they would likely tell you that it began with the creation of the Linux project in 1991. But that wouldn't be right either. The truth is that Tux the Penguin and the Linux kernel he so desperately protects are the love child of various precursor software and programmers. That is why today we will be delving into the complexities of the origins of Linux, leaving no motherboard or computer chip unturned. This is Skillthrive, and let's get started. While it's difficult to pinpoint the exact point that facilitated the future development of Linux, a commonly accepted date is 1969, which marked the invention and creation of the UNIX operating system by Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie. 1 year later, the first official release would take place in 1970, only to be rewritten in the programming language C to make it portable in 1972. Now, fast forward to 1983 when Richard Stallman created what is known as the GNU project, which was the first free Unix-like operating system, a precursor characteristic of what would define the Linux operating system later on. A few years later, Minix was developed by Andrew S. Tannenbaum, which acted as an educational software for teaching students computer science and programming. However, as you'll find out later, it was the educational limitations and purpose that would ultimately set the scene for the creation and foundation of the Linux operating system. And finally, in 1991, we have the moment you've all been waiting for, the release of the Linux operating system. But wait, we missed a bunch of important details. As all of this was happening, a certain boy was working hard on an old school computer with his grandfather. Let's take a trip back in time for a moment. Meet Linus Torvalds. He was born in Helsinki, Finland on the 28th of December, 1969. From the onset, Linus was on a promising trajectory for fame and success. Alongside the nurturing of his parents, he was also raised by his grandfather, Leo Turnquist, who was one of Finland's first statistics professors. Furthermore, Linus was one of the few who had access to a computer during his childhood. And his first experience came at the age of 11 with his grandfather's VIC-20, an 8-bit home computer sold by Commodore Business Machines. With the help and guidance of his grandfather, Linus quickly fell in love with computer science. He initially learned to program in BASIC before eventually purchasing a Sinclair QL. He even modified it to write his version of Pac-Man, which he called Coolman, because at the time, as Linus stated, it was so hard to get software in Finland. But Linus and his grandfather didn't only partake in computer-based activities. No, they were also big fans of the zoo, which would later prove successful for Linux. But more on that later. Following the creation of Coolman, Linus progressed to larger and more advanced systems. He purchased an Intel 80386 base clone of the IBM PC while attending the University of Helsinki, pursuing a master's degree in computer science. After that, he acquired a copy of Minix, which one of his professors, Andrew Tannenbaum, described in his book as an educational stripped-down version of UNIX. But little did Linus know, this Minix copy would lay the foundation for his future success and propel him to heights he could only dream of achieving. However, we're getting ahead of ourselves because there was much to be done, and Linus was just starting. While Minix proved to be a valuable educational tool for Linus, he felt that the system had too many limitations and lacked versatility. And so, motivated by his curiosity and the desire for something better, he started what he called the Linux project. The Linux project was Linus's attempt to create his operating system. Initially known as the Freax kernel, it was later named the Linux kernel after Linus's friend, Ari Lemke, named the directory Linux. The kernel served as the core component of the Linux operating system, interacting directly with the hardware. However, there was a catch. Linus wanted Linux to be open source, free, and accessible to everyone. The birth of this project is marked by the inaugural post made by Linus to the Minix newsgroup, saying, "I'm doing a free operating system. Just a hobby, won't be as big and professional as GNU. But of course, as we all know, this little hobby would dwarf the likes of GNU. We can think of the Linux project as cultivating a cornfield, with Linus as the farmer. In the beginning, Linus planted the corn kernel, which had the potential to grow into a flourishing cornstalk, just as the Linux kernel had the potential to grow into a robust operating system when it was uploaded on September 17, 1991. However, like a real corn kernel, the Linux kernel required nurturing and care. Between 1991 and 1994, Linus dedicated himself to developing the kernel, refining its code, adding features, and ensuring it interacted effectively with the hardware. This development was akin to a farmer tending to a growing cornstalk, providing water, nutrients, and protection from pests. But there was a problem. For Linux to grow at the rate it needed, Linus would need to recruit the help of other programmers, much like a farmer would need assistance from others to tend the cornfield. Over time, this collaborative effort allowed more expertise to be brought to the table, expediting the growth of Linux. And just as cornstalks grow taller and stronger, producing ears of corn with multiple kernels, the Linux project flourished as more developers joined and contributed their own code. This eventually led to the formation of the Linux ecosystem, which resulted in the official release of version 1.0 in the spring of 1994. Over the next few years, the Linux team and operating system would continue to grow. However, Linus wasn't quite ready to devote his entire life to the system just yet. Instead, Linus moved to California with his family after accepting a position at Transmeta, a startup company focused on designing an eco-friendly processing unit. Around this time, Linus also made one of the most significant impacts on the Linux community, introducing the penguin mascot, Tux. But why did Linus pick a penguin as the mascot? As previously mentioned, Linus often went to the zoo, but on one fateful day, he was maliciously attacked by, you guessed it, a penguin. And the name? Well, that mixes Linus's last name, Torvalds, and UNIX, and the fact that a penguin looks like it's wearing a tuxedo. But anyway, such is the way of a man with ambition, the opportunity cost of spending resources on anything other than the Linux operating system became a burden too heavy to bear. That's why in 2003, Linus left Transmeta to focus exclusively on developing the Linux kernel. The project was now being backed by the open source development labs, which included companies like IBM, HP, and Intel, to name a few. 4 short years later, in 2007, Open Source Development Labs and an organization known as the Free Standards Group would merge to form what is now known as the Linux Foundation, which focuses on the primary objective of promoting Linux in the competition with Microsoft Windows. However, fast forward to 2023, and Microsoft now embraces open software and has actually collaborated with Linux on multiple occasions to push the software and operating system to new heights. In an interview with ZDNet, Linus even said, I talked to Microsoft engineers at various conferences and I feel like, yes, they have changed, and the engineers are happy, and they're really happy working on Linux, so I completely dismiss all the anti-Microsoft stuff. Furthermore, we are now on version 6.0 of the Linux kernel, with constant updates and improvements just around the corner. The software is also used by all major space programs, including NASA and SpaceX, to name a few. In some way or another, it's used in almost everything, from smartphones and services to even military submarines. All in all, Linux is much more than just a kernel or operating system. It embodies the spirit of community, collaboration, and the power of human potential. Its journey is a testament to the transformative impact that open source software can have on society. From a small hobby project to a global force, Linux beckons us to explore the boundaries of what is possible when we unite a collective intelligence and embrace the principles of openness. So make sure to click the like button and subscribe so that we too can leverage the power of community and improve Linux one line of code at a time. This has been Skillthrive, and thank you for watching.